We are back for day 9 of Inktober 2025, of course, the Zentangle Edition. And we are going to be drawing a tangle that was created, or the step out was created by Barbara Steyer. And we're going to show you the details of that tangle here as we continue working on our composition for the month. You ready to go, Gayle?
Sure am.
All right, let's do it. So the tangle for today can actually be drawn in a couple different ways. It uses, on the one hand, a sort of grid pattern that is used to keep the tangles in a nice series of rows, and it can fill a wide area and looks really cool actually. Or it can be more of a free form, like a floral type, where there are petals or flowers or leaves or however you'd like to think of them that can go outward from a central point. I'm actually going to try a combination so that you can see at least a glimpse of both versions, but I just don't have enough room here thinking ahead for the whole month to flesh this out in a lot of detail. Now what I might recommend here is to start, let's start, at least I'm going to, with the grid version, and I'm going to create a couple lines with my pencil just to help me keep this layout in a pleasing format. It's a little, for me anyway, drawing these kinds of shapes, it has a reminiscence to another tangle called Narfellow, which is a really cool tangle also. And creating wavy lines that are consistently shaped and formed and meet in the right place can sometimes be challenging, believe it or not, especially if you're looking for some kind of symmetry. So I find that having this underlying grid is very helpful for doing that. So I've simply drawn 3 parallel pencil lines. And now I'll take my 01 micron and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. So we're going to create a curving line that loops from this centerpiece out here and back like that. Just going to make a couple little bumps, if you will. And the same process will happen in reverse here, like that. And now we would, if we had another pencil line here, we would draw an additional one and just follow this pattern, and we could do it on both sides, and we would create multiples of this little shape, which then gives us the base or the foundation for this tangle pattern. I should have had these lines touching right there. And then the second step for this grid format would be to create an aura that follows this inner line, or goes inside I should say, and follows that shape, and then that is repeated here. Now you would also then, if you had additional patterns here, they would follow the same way. So there'd be another pattern that came in and touched here, so we would draw that up here and so on. But in my case, I'm going to do the freeform version on the outside of this. But then the next step in this tangle is to create a little item down here, kind of like a teardrop or a little leaf shape. So in this case, it's just going to peek up a little bit there. And then we would draw a line right down the center. And then we would create some sort of pattern. Now, the original step out calls for vertical lines like this, which would be fine. In fact, you know what? I'm going to change my idea here on the fly. I'm going to do the vertical lines here. I was going to do a little different shape, but I think I'll modify my other pieces so that I can at least show you how this would look. And so we're creating these parallel lines that fill this side of that pattern. Now, the next thing would be to do that same thing, and you could fill things here, but the original step out, which I'm following pretty closely right here, just calls for that, and the pattern would basically be done and then simply repeated as wide or as long as you wanted it to be. Now the other way that this tangle can be done is a little more free form, like leaves and so forth. So what I'm going to do is just follow this general pattern shape and make a leaf like that. I will then draw my inside piece, that aura, which I can't see the very bottom of it, of course, and then we're just duplicating that. Now up here I'm going to follow this again, but a little more loosely. But it is the same idea, I'm just not keeping it constrained to a grid. All right, and I'll do the same up in here. And of course, every artist that draws any shape is going to try to make it their own and do some little variances with it. And that's kind of what's happening here. I just wanted to be able to use both forms of it. So I've got those, and now I'm going to tilt my sheet here, and I'm going to draw a similar idea on this other side. And these in my version are a little more leaf-like, a little bit more organic, and it just allows me to have a little more control, if you want to think of it that way, of exactly where my shape is going. And they're not exactly shaped, as you can see, like these that would be on the grid. And that one's actually going up behind there. Like that. And now I'm going to look at this, and my original thing was I was going to do these areas here, I'm going to do in the opposite direction. So instead of being vertical like these, I'm doing these horizontally as relative to the leaf itself. That's what I mean by that. It'll just create a little bit of a variance within the design and let me distinguish the more freeform leaves from those on the grid. So I've got that basic pattern laid in there. Now what I think I'm going to also do on my version here, just because I want to add a little more boldness over here, this big piece here is very light, the one that we did last session. And by the way, I did, even though I think I mentioned in the last video that I was going to hold off on the aura until I decided what I was going to do. Well, sure enough, I decided to add that aura to that, which is very simple. I didn't film it, but it's obviously just following the outer pattern. And that just lets me separate this tangle from others, especially if we start involving shading or inking. It just gives me more flexibility. So I like to keep things a little separate while also keeping them together. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that there was this other line that goes down through here, kind of like where I drew my original pencil mark, and I'm going to ink all of this in. Now you might say, man, that's going to be a lot of ink and a lot of boldness. Well, that's true, but I want to create some of that drama that will be useful in my overall composition, because not every tangle is going to provide that opportunity. So now with this done, we can move to the shading. And there's several ways that these pieces could be shaded depending exactly how you've drawn them or layered them. But in my case, I'm going to add a little shadow around these little inner bulbs there. I think that's going to work for me for this particular tangle. Some of these, as you'll no doubt see as we continue, are going to take up smaller spaces because, again, not to sound like a broken record, we need to allow room for our entire month's worth of tangle patterns to be expressed within this drawing. Now we might be able to go right out to the edge of our paper and literally fill it 100%. That may be how we end up doing it. Or we may have sort of a jagged, if you will, edge to our composition where we can add some shading or some colors or something like that. Just depends. I have no idea. I'm just doing this as we go, right along with you. Obviously, I have an idea of the tangles we're using and some concept of what I want to do with the little cartoon elements that we're adding here and there, but I don't have any idea where this composition is going any more than you do. So I'm glad that you're joining along with us and having some fun. Okay, Gayle, how's yours coming along?
I'm all done. I didn't have too much room, so I just squeezed a few in.
Okay, there's a look at Gayle's. Very nice. I actually really like yours. I like it much better than mine. Yours is more of a natural floral use of this tile or this pattern, which is really cool. They're a little bit bigger than mine, so you can see some details. And I like your choice of curved lines as opposed to straight in either direction. Very nice.
Thanks.
Very nice. And I also noticed, I forgot to point it out, that whereas I inked in my border around the nameplate just for that boldness, you did a nice sort of a checkerboard or a form of Knightsbridge or something like that. And it actually is really cool. It looks like a marquee light. You can almost imagine it flashing around and around there. So very, very nice on that as well.
Thank you.
So there's Gayle's. There again was mine. And quite a difference there, how we both interpreted this pattern, and its placement was a little different just by the nature of our drawing. But I think it looks really cool in both cases. So hopefully you are continuing to fill your sheet out. And we're going to keep doing this every day till the month is done. And I hope to see everyone again real soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.